So we're going to start off with Kamala Harris. Some of you may have seen the videos that were out there on social media of her with the president of Ghana, Akufo-Addo, talking about certain topics. Baba Makro, you specifically wanted to talk about what you saw in her visit to Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that situation?
Asante Sana, brother. Yes. I think it's very interesting that 3 months into the year, 5 Biden administration officials have visited the African continent. Now, I don't know for a fact, but I would guess that's probably a record. The ambassador to the UN, the U.S. ambassador to the UN visited. So did the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of the State, the wife of Joe Biden, Dr. Jill Biden, and this week, in fact, just returning today from a 3-nation visit, Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia, is the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and of course, the whatever they call her husband, the second man or something to that effect. They were over there desecrating kente cloth and doing all kinds of other things.
I saw that that picture of him standing on the stage with some kente cloth on.
Desecrating kente cloth and carrying on in the interest of the American empire, putting on a show, an Academy Award performance, as Malcolm would call it. It was a circus. It was a show, beat anything Hollywood could produce. But so it's interesting. It's interesting. Why has the United States under the Biden administration probably sent more people in 3 months than maybe even the Obama administration sent in a whole year? And I think what is showing is the concern, even though they are in deep denial about it, about the world becoming, multipolar, particularly with the rise of China, the ongoing war in Ukraine, where, Russia, despite all of the sanctions and all of the arms that have flowed into Ukraine from NATO, and all of the technical assistance, the intelligence from drones and satellites, Russia still, fights on against NATO. They're just using Ukrainian bodies. So there seems to be a very, very real concern about the United States losing its grip on what is clearly the most important continent on the planet Earth, and that is the continent of Africa. And so I found a couple of interesting things, and I know, Brother Amos, you probably saw some things also. But aside from the Academy Award performance at the Cape Coast slave prison, where she acted like she wanted to cry. Same place, oh, by the way, that Obama visited in 2009, but all of the crocodile tears he and his family shed didn't stop him from destroying Libya in 2011. So we know that this, as Dr. Marimbani has told us, hypocrisy is a way of life for these people. It just comes natural to them. Mm-hmm. To say things that are purely for the consumption of others, things that they don't believe. They are always lecturing African countries about democracy, and people need to be reminded that Black people had to refight the right to just vote in the 1960s. 180 plus years after the founding of this country, of this empire, which cost the lives of people. And then those very voting rights that were established in 1965 have been systematically chipped away, same as they were under Reconstruction. But they want to lecture African countries about democracy. But the thing that really captured my attention was the recognition of the demographics of Africa and how important African youth are on the future of this planet, and particularly for countries like the United States that seek to maintain an imperial hegemony over countries, over a continent like Africa that's so valuable. So this was my spin on the speech she gave at Black Star Gate. I think this is where Kwame Nkrumah announced Ghana's independence in March of 1957. The basic playbook the American empire used to shift the consciousness of young people of African descent in the U.S. during the 1970s is being applied to continental African youth, the most important demographic on the planet. Symbols of success as agents of the American empire, such as Vice President Kamala Harris, spoke to African youth at Black Star Gate, and she cut straight to the chase. Now, these are her words. So I don't need to tell you that the median age on the African continent is 19. By 2050, 1 in 4 people in the entire world will be on this very continent, 1 in 4. That, of course, means what happens on this continent impacts the entire world. So she didn't waste any time. She went straight to the point of where her message was going to be delivered. It was going to be an attempt to control the minds and therefore the actions of young Africans so that Africa can remain a neo-colony of the United States and of the countries of, former colonial powers in Western Europe. Continuing this, she said, as Vice President Joe Biden said at the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit last December, we are all in on Africa. All in. Yeah, you're right. We are all in because the fate of the American people, listen to this. The fate of the American people and of America, this is the way she talks, and the continent of Africa are interconnected and interdependent. The fate of America. This is coming from the vice president, okay?
Not lying.
She's telling the truth. She's absolutely correct. She's being brutally honest, even though she's, speaking with a forked tongue. And today I will speak about one particular area of opportunity, investment in innovation. From the innovation of new technology, the origin of social movements. See, these people know exactly what they want to do. They want to do what Carter G. Woodson said, control thinking, control actions in order to maintain, their power, their prestige, their profits. Let's see, where was I? Has come about by challenging the premise, questioning the status quo, and bold thinking. And so I say it is your work, your creativity, your determination that will drive the future. And with that, then, African ideas and innovation will shape the future of the world. Now, she's saying African ideas, but we all know that it's about, just like our esteemed revolutionary brother Jamil El-Amin said at the Free Huey rally in 1968, they want the minds of our youth. This is what brother El-Amin said at the Free Huey rally in 1968. And then, of course, Dr. Bobby Wright said, there's only one battle left, the battle for the black mind. And it's a battle that they have largely won in the United States. Now they are applying the same tactics to Africa. And so she says, and so we must invest in the African ingenuity and creativity, which will unlock incredible economic growth and opportunities, not only for the people of the 54 countries that make up this diverse continent, but for the American people and people around the world. Can she be more obvious? So the Biden-Harris administration and the American people stand ready to partner with you to help accelerate the innovation and entrepreneurship that is already underway. And then she said this, she also visited a music studio. And we know how important music as a component of culture has been in creating what Dr. Amos Wilson calls the psychodynamics of Black self-annihilation in service of white domination in the United States, over the past 30, 35, 40 years. We know how important it has been. We discussed this on on one of our programs. So, and she had some entertainers, there with her, Idris Elba, and Cheryl Lee Ralph, and some others. And so this is the same game plan that's been in place. Malcolm talked about it in the 1960s, and I think it's critically important that our people not get sucked up into this. But we know that it's a tremendous struggle. Now, I got a couple other things, Brother Amos, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and either respond to that or talk about some of the things that you observed.
Well, my first observation is that Akufo-Addo can no longer be trusted.
Okay.
We saw, in the past, his response to Russia moving in and defending its territory against NATO advancing in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when Putin sent him a message, saying that, we were standing with you when you were fighting for your liberation.
Right.
But to see him stand next to Kamala Harris and to see the reporter ask him the question that he did about the potential of a bill being passed in Ghana, like the bill that was passed in Uganda, and for him to answer the question the way that he did, it was almost as if he was assuring the reporter that if it does pass Parliament, I'll step in and do what needs to be done to make sure that that this doesn't happen in our country. It just sounded, his whole statement just sounded weak to me, and all of his actions point to somebody who has bending over for the United States government, allowing them to bring their military in, allowing them to bring their culture in, and I can go on and on. We remember what he did, with all of the policies around COVID and everything else. So that was one observation. The second observation is, and this is what we'll be going into when we talk about Russia's relations with Africa, is that the United States is always coming to Africa to see what it can take. That's been the historical relationship, along with all of the other European colonialists that had territories in Africa. They all come to the African continent to see what they can take or what they can steal. So nothing that Kamala Harris is saying leads me to believe that there's going to be some type of strategic partnership. The only partnership is going to be between the United States and the corrupt neo-colonial African leaders that are going to allow them to rape the African continent while the Jews sit back and get rich.
Yeah.
So when I hear her say things like, the West and America depends on Africa, she's telling the truth. Because without that money, without those resources, they won't be able to do what they want to do and live the lifestyle that they want to live. So, this is why it's important for African Americans to be aware and to fight this as much as possible. While we are living in this country, we need to be fighting against these policies happening on the African continent, because we know from history what's going to happen if the U.S. is successful.
Exactly. The other thing, we know that when Akufo-Addo was in Washington, he was literally on his knees begging for U.S. military intervention in Burkina Faso. He was saying that terrorism, was on the doorstep of Ghana, and that Burkina Faso was on the verge of bringing in, Russian military support to help them defend their country. And, we have seen historically Ghana being, I would say, the leading country that is associated with the United States Africa Command. They just finished some military games that took place in Ghana and I think it was Cote d'Ivoire in March. And then they have Operation African Lion coming up, which Ghana will be participating in June. So he was literally begging. And so Harris responded Harris announced on March 27th that the United States will provide $100 million over 10 years in new security help. So what's that? $10 million a year. Now, mind you, they gave Ukraine over $100 billion in 1 year. Okay, billion. This is $100 million. She said to help address the threats of violent extremism and instability today, I am pleased to announce $100 million in support of Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo. Last week, President Biden announced a strategic plan for coastal West Africa as part of the United States strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. Today, funding and the announcement that I've just made will help implement that plan and will address security, governance, and development issues in the region. Okay, so here was Ghana's president making this, asking for these resources and these funds in December, and this is their response. Now, the interesting thing is, Brother Amos, when they raise this issue of security and they talk about these threats, violent extremism, and instability, they never ever address the root cause of that problem in West Africa, in the Sahel. They never connected to NATO's war of aggression on Libya in 2011, led by who I call the evil triplets: Barack Obama, Nicolas Sarkozy of France, and David Cameron of the United Kingdom. And of course, Obama was the big dog in that fight. I got charts I can provide to anybody to see, what the United States contributed to that war that led to the overthrow of the government of Muammar Gaddafi and the continuing destabilization of Libya, which was actually the most highly developed country on the continent of Africa before it was destroyed by NATO, and the subsequent expansion, because they brought in all of these jihadis who had been fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq and other places. They brought them in to be their army on the ground, while the United States and France and Great Britain and others countries in NATO, I think there were 14 NATO countries involved, provided the Air Force. And this is what has led to the terrorism that is wreaking havoc on the Sahel: Mali, Niger, Chad, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, and then spreading, into Benin and other countries in West Africa today. But they never make that connection. It's just something that, this is what just happens on the African continent, right? So she mentioned that, and I think that's significant. But as I was listening to a podcast, some brothers and sisters on the continent have a podcast called Connect Africa, and they were saying that when they make these pledges, say the $100 million will go to the United States military industrial complex, to the United States government. I mean, to the Department of Defense. That's where the money will go. They might send a few crumbs, because they have to keep, as Brother Amos, from the overthrow of people, like the Ejiofor, Kwame Nkrumah. They have to keep these army officials, these generals and whatnot, well paid, so that they can act in the interest of the American empire and the former colonial powers. So some of the money, of course, will go to them, but the brothers and sisters at Connect Africa were very adept in their analysis. Now, she moved on to Tanzania, and in Tanzania, she raised the issue, said Tanzania needs to continue to move away from the policies of your favorite President Magufuli and become more democratic. Once again, the same old hypocritical line, telling, and they move around and say these things with such arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, y'all need to, what? Look at this country. You can't even provide safety for children. You're talking about a democracy, And then I think she pledged for Zambia. They only got $16 million, which I think she left Zambia today to come back to Washington, D.C. The money she pledged to Tanzania, where do I have it here? I believe it was $560 million, I believe. But she was really, talking out of the side of her neck, because that much money hasn't been allocated. It would have to go through the U.S. Congress. So, that's just, probably a pipe dream. But, this is the way they move. And of course, it's Cold War politics all over again, in terms of what we're seeing. And our hope is that there are other brothers and sisters, and we know that there are. We know that there are people like PLO Lumumba and Julius Malema and others. And we had a very good article by a brother, a professor. I'd have to find his name. I might get it before you finish. To point people towards a lot of Africans see through this, but once again, Africa is dominated by neo-colonial leadership, and they will buy into this propaganda because it benefits them personally. So we just wanted to point that out, that what's taking place is the same ball game that was run on the minds of what was a developing revolutionary consciousness among young Africans in America in the 1960s and 1970s. They want to make sure that never happens on the African continent, but I don't think they'll be successful.